My name is Emma Carter, and this is the story of the 12 gifts that changed my life. It started innocently enough on a cold December morning, just 2 weeks before Christmas. I remember stepping onto my snow-covered porch, the air crisp against my skin. There, placed neatly by the door, was a small box wrapped in red and gold paper. A note was tied to it with a delicate ribbon, my name written in an elegant script I didn't recognize. Inside was a hand-painted ornament, its golden snowflakes glinting softly in the pale winter sunlight. I assumed it was from Nathan, my estranged husband. Nathan had always loved Christmas. He adored the pageantry, the glittering lights, the carefully wrapped gifts. Maybe this was his way of apologizing, a first step toward mending the damage he had caused. Or so I told myself. The next morning, another gift appeared. Then another. Each one felt carefully chosen, deeply personal. A leather-bound journal with my initials embossed in gold. A locket so delicate it seemed to shimmer under the glow of the fireplace. A set of calligraphy pens, perfectly weighted, something I had once casually mentioned I'd always wanted. These weren't just gifts, they were reminders. Reminders of who I was before the heartbreak, before the lies. Each day, I opened the door with growing anticipation. I'd hold my breath, wondering what new surprise might be waiting for me on the porch. By the sixth gift, I couldn't ignore the questions swirling in my mind. If these gifts were from Nathan, how did he know me so well? How had he suddenly learned to listen after all these years of silence? I told myself it had to be him. Who else could it be? Who else would take the time? Still, something about the notes felt different. They weren't grand or dramatic. They were quiet, thoughtful. They spoke to a part of me that I hadn't shared with anyone. By the 12th gift, the truth was impossible to ignore. It wasn't Nathan who had been leaving these treasures. It wasn't the man I had once trusted with my heart. The truth was something far more unexpected, something that would unravel my world in ways I never could have imagined. If you found yourself in Emma's shoes, how would you react to uncovering the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Before we dive deeper into this story today, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this journey, and give this video a thumbs up. Your support energized us for sharing these intimate stories, and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. A year ago, my world crumbled. It wasn't loud or dramatic, no slamming doors or screaming matches. It was quiet, like a house slowly sinking into sand until it's too late to save it. Nathan cheated. The man I had trusted with my heart for 10 years broke it in a way I didn't think was possible. Since then, life has been about getting through the day. I wake up before the sun, tie on my apron, and head to the bakery. It's my sanctuary, the one place where life feels predictable. The smell of fresh bread baking in the oven, the steady rhythm of kneading dough, the hum of Christmas carols playing softly in the background, it's all soothing. Even if my heart isn't. Christmas was approaching, and the bakery was busier than ever. Parents rushed in with their children, rosy-cheeked from the cold, pointing excitedly at cookies shaped like reindeer and snowflakes. The bell on the door jingled constantly, and the warm glow of the Christmas lights in the windows felt like a shield against the icy winds outside. And then there was Lily, my 8-year-old daughter, and my light. She perched on a stool at the counter, her tiny hands carefully piping frosting onto cookies. "Look, Mommy," she said one day, holding up a sugar cookie covered in uneven red and green stripes. Her grin stretched wide, her cheeks dusted with flour. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I told her, laughing softly. Her giggles filled the bakery, and for a moment, it was easy to forget the ache in my chest. For Lily, Christmas was still magical. But for me, it was a reminder of everything I'd lost. I expected this holiday to be like any other since the split, quiet, predictable, and a little lonely. That's why the gift on my porch caught me so completely off guard. It was early morning, the sun just beginning to rise. The snow crunched softly under my boots as I stepped outside to unlock the bakery. The cold air nipped at my cheeks, and my breath formed small clouds as I exhaled. That's when I saw it, a small box, wrapped in red and gold paper, sitting neatly on the doorstep. I hesitated, staring at it for a moment. The paper shimmered faintly in the light, tied with a delicate ribbon that looked almost too perfect to untie. A card was attached, my name written on it in elegant, looping handwriting. The crinkle of the paper was oddly satisfying as I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was an ornament, hand-painted with golden snowflakes against a deep, icy blue background. It felt delicate in my hands, almost fragile, as if it could shatter with the slightest wrong move. The card read, "To brighten your tree, as you brighten the world." I turned the ornament over in my hands, marveling at the intricate detail. The golden snowflakes seemed to shimmer as they caught the soft morning light. A faint scent of pine and cinnamon clung to the box, mingling with the crispness of the air. I stood there for what felt like minutes, the cold forgotten, wondering who could have sent it. My first thought was Nathan. It made sense. He had always loved Christmas and grand gestures. Maybe this was his way of apologizing, of trying to fix what he had broken. I brought the box inside and set it on the counter just as Lily came bounding into the room. "What's that?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "A gift," I said, handing her the ornament. Her face lit up as she held it, turning it over in her small hands. "It's so pretty." "Who's it from?" "I'm not sure," I admitted, forcing a smile. "Maybe it's from Santa," she declared, laughing as she ran to the tree. She carefully hung the ornament on one of the branches, stepping back to admire her work. The glow from the twinkling Christmas lights reflected off the ornament, making it look even more magical. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the gift. The note, the ornament, it was all so thoughtful, so personal. It didn't feel like something Nathan would do, but who else could it be? I decided to let it go, convincing myself it was just a kind gesture. One gift didn't change anything. The next morning, there was another one. This time, it was a leather-bound journal with my initials embossed in gold. The cover was soft and smooth, the kind of journal you wouldn't dare to waste on meaningless notes. The card read, "For your thoughts, which are always worth capturing." I ran my fingers over the initials, my heart catching at the thoughtfulness. Nathan wouldn't know I kept a journal, he never paid attention to the details like that. Each day brought something new. A locket so delicate it shimmered under the warm glow of the fireplace. A set of calligraphy pens, perfectly weighted, that reminded me of a conversation I'd had years ago. A music box that played a melody from my childhood, one I hadn't heard in decades. With every gift, my curiosity grew. Lily was delighted, racing to the door each morning to see what surprise awaited us. "It's like Christmas every day," she said, bouncing on her toes as she unwrapped the latest treasure. Her laughter filled the house, making it hard to dwell on my doubts. But as much as I wanted to believe these gifts were from Nathan, a part of me knew better. These weren't just gifts, they were pieces of me. Pieces I thought no one else had noticed. By the time the 12th gift arrived, I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't Nathan. It couldn't be. The truth, when it finally revealed itself, would change everything. My family, my friends, even the way I saw myself, it was all about to unravel. And nothing would ever be the same. Who do you think sent the gifts? Was it Nathan, or could it be someone else? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every day, a new gift appeared on my doorstep. At first, it was exciting, like waking up to a little piece of magic each morning. But as the days went on, that excitement started twisting into something else. A mix of curiosity and unease. The gifts were thoughtful. So thoughtful, in fact, that they almost felt too personal. A handwritten letter tucked inside a book of poetry, carefully chosen because it contained a poem I had once mentioned loving. A delicate locket, its golden surface glinting under the soft glow of the living room candles. Inside, there was room for 2 pictures, but it was empty, as if waiting for me to decide whose faces belonged there. Each gift felt like a puzzle piece, but the picture they formed remained frustratingly out of reach. I started bringing the gifts to the bakery. Claire, my assistant, noticed them almost immediately. Claire is 22, full of energy, and the kind of person who turns everything into a romance novel. "Oh my gosh, Emma," she exclaimed one morning, practically tripping over herself as she spotted the latest package. It was a beautifully wrapped box with ribbons so intricate I felt bad undoing them. "Is this from your secret admirer?" she teased, wagging her eyebrows at me. I rolled my eyes, trying not to laugh. "It's not a secret admirer, Claire." "Sure it's not," she said, grinning as she leaned closer to inspect the box. "What is it this time? A love letter? Diamonds? Maybe a one-way ticket to Paris?" "It's probably from Nathan," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, they felt hollow. Claire stopped, her expression softening. "Nathan? Really? Are you sure?" "I'm not sure of anything," I admitted, pulling the ribbon loose. The box held a set of calligraphy pens, perfectly weighted, the kind I'd dreamed of owning when I was younger. My breath caught in my throat as I ran my fingers over them. How would Nathan have known? How could he have remembered something so small? "This doesn't seem like something a husband trying to make up for cheating would send," Claire said gently. I shot her a look, but she wasn't wrong. Later that week, things took a more comical turn. One of the packages was misdelivered to Mrs. Sanders, my nosy neighbor. She knocked on my door, holding the box out like it was some kind of scandal. "Emma, dear," she began, her voice dripping with curiosity. "I think this belongs to you." Her eyes sparkled as I took the box from her hands. I could feel her practically willing me to open it in front of her. "Thank you, Mrs. Sanders," I said, hoping to end the conversation. "So, who's it from?" she pressed, leaning closer. "I don't know," I replied honestly. She gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "A mystery man. How thrilling. Is it Nathan?" "I don't think so," I said, avoiding her gaze. "Well, if it's not him," she whispered conspiratorially, "then you've got yourself a real admirer." Lucky girl. I laughed awkwardly, retreating back inside as quickly as I could. Mrs. Sanders wasn't exactly wrong, but the mystery wasn't as romantic to me as it seemed to her. Each day, the gifts became harder to ignore. A soft cashmere scarf in my favorite color. A music box that played a hauntingly beautiful melody from my childhood. Every single gift carried meaning, as though the sender knew me better than I knew myself. At night, I would sit in the living room, turning the latest gift over in my hands, feeling the weight of it. The locket caught the light from the fireplace, its surface gleaming. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was a placeholder, waiting for someone to fill it with meaning. The questions swirled in my mind. Was it Nathan? Was he trying to make amends in a way that finally felt genuine? Or was it someone else entirely? Lily, of course, was thrilled. She would race to the door every morning, her laughter echoing through the house as she unwrapped the packages. "It's like Christmas every day," she said, bouncing on her toes as she held up a silk ribbon from one of the packages. Her joy was contagious, but it didn't erase the lingering doubt in my mind. I wanted to believe the gifts were a sign of love. But there was a part of me that wondered, was it love, or was it something else entirely? What would your reaction be to receiving anonymous gifts? Would you find it romantic or unsettling? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. Nathan was trying to win me back. I suppose, in some ways, I should have expected it. He had always been the type to show up with grand gestures after making a mistake, hoping the show of effort would erase the damage he'd done. And now, here he was, doing it all over again. It started small, a text message late one evening saying he wanted to talk. Then, a few days later, he was at Lily's school pickup, standing near his car with that familiar, uncertain smile. "Emma, do you have a minute?" he asked, keeping his tone light, casual, like we were old friends catching up. I didn't have a minute. Or rather, I didn't want to have a minute. I brushed him off with a polite but firm response and drove home, Lily chattering in the backseat about her day. But Nathan didn't stop there. The next time I saw him, it was at the Christmas market. It was one of those crisp, clear evenings where the air bites at your cheeks, and everything smells of roasted chestnuts and mulled cider. Lily had begged me to go, her excitement contagious as she bundled herself in her bright pink scarf and mittens. I had just picked up a cup of hot cocoa when I saw him. Nathan. Standing just a few stalls away, holding a bouquet of poinsettias that looked absurdly out of place amidst the handcrafted ornaments and knitted scarves for sale. He caught my eye and walked over, his breath visible in the cold air. "Emma," he said, his voice soft, almost hesitant. Lily spotted him and ran ahead before I could react, her little arms wrapping around his legs. "Daddy," she exclaimed, her voice filled with the pure, uncomplicated joy only a child can feel. Nathan crouched down to hug her, and for a moment, I saw that familiar tenderness in his expression. But then he straightened, his eyes locking onto mine, and that tenderness was replaced by something else, determination. "I wanted to talk," he said, holding out the poinsettias awkwardly. I stared at the flowers, their vibrant red petals contrasting sharply with the stark whiteness of the snow around us. I didn't reach for them. "Nathan, what are you doing here?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. He sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. I want us to talk, Emma. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I love you. I always have." The words hung in the air, heavy and unsteady. Lily tugged on his coat, pulling him toward a stall selling wooden ornaments. "Come on, Daddy," she said, oblivious to the tension between us. Nathan let her lead him away, glancing back at me as if waiting for a response I wasn't ready to give. Later that evening, I sat alone in the living room, the poinsettias still sitting on the counter where I had left them. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away, but I couldn't bring myself to arrange them in a vase either. The truth was, Nathan's efforts didn't feel real. They felt clumsy, forced, like he was trying to patch a hole in a sinking ship with duct tape. The gifts, though, those felt different. Every time I opened one of those packages, it felt like peeling back a layer of myself I had almost forgotten. The book of poetry. The music box. The locket. They weren't just thoughtful, they were intimate. They spoke to the parts of me I thought no one else had noticed. Nathan didn't see those parts of me. Not then, and not now. And yet, there was someone who did. What I didn't know then was that Luke was watching. Luke. Nathan's best friend. The one person who had seen the unraveling of our marriage from the sidelines. He was there that evening at the Christmas market, standing in the shadows near the edge of the stalls. He had seen the exchange between Nathan and me, watched as Nathan handed me the poinsettias, watched as I refused to take them. Luke hadn't meant to be there. He told himself that when he arrived. But something about seeing me, even from a distance, had pulled him there. He didn't stay long. He couldn't. Watching Nathan with Lily, watching the way I looked at Nathan, somewhere between anger and resignation, it was too much. That night, Luke paced his small apartment, running his hands through his hair as he tried to make sense of everything. The gifts had been his idea, a way to remind me of my worth, to give me something beautiful in a time when everything felt broken. He never intended for it to go this far. "I never meant to hurt her," Luke said, his voice low and strained as he sat across from Greg, his coworker and closest confidant. Greg leaned back in his chair, his beer bottle balanced on the edge of his knee. "You never meant to hurt her, but what happens when she finds out?" Luke sighed, staring at the floor. "I just wanted her to feel loved. After everything Nathan put her through, she deserves that." Greg tilted his head, his expression equal parts amused and concerned. "Dude, you're playing with fire. She's going to find out eventually. And when she does, well, good luck explaining that one." "I know," Luke admitted. "But I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. She deserves so much more than what Nathan gave her." Greg shrugged, taking another swig of his beer. "Well, you've got two choices. You either come clean, or you hope she never figures it out. And I'm telling you right now, option 2 isn't going to work." Luke didn't respond. He just sat there, the weight of Greg's words settling heavily in the room. If you were in Emma's shoes, would you forgive Nathan and give him another chance? Or would you take a chance on someone new? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The final gift arrived on Christmas Eve. By then, the ritual had become as familiar as the rising sun. I opened the door that morning, and there it was, a small velvet box tied with a satin ribbon. My fingers trembled slightly as I untied it, as if some part of me already knew this one would be different. Inside was a locket. It was delicate, golden, and engraved with 3 simple words, "You are loved." I held it in my hand, the metal cool against my skin. It felt heavier than the other gifts, not in weight, but in meaning. This wasn't just a gesture. It was a declaration. I tucked the locket into my pocket, unsure of how to process it. Tonight, I had planned a quiet Christmas Eve dinner with Sarah and Lily, something simple and warm to mark the holiday. But as the day wore on, the locket seemed to grow heavier, the unanswered questions pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't ignore. By the time evening arrived, I was determined to put the gift, and the mystery behind it, out of my mind. I focused on setting the table, lighting candles, and making sure everything was perfect for Lily. Sarah arrived just as I was putting the finishing touches on the meal, her arms full of presents and her voice full of laughter. "Merry Christmas Eve," she called out, her energy filling the room like sunlight cutting through clouds. Lily ran to her, excitedly showing off the locket. "Look what Mommy got today," she said, holding it up for Sarah to admire. Sarah's eyes flickered with curiosity as she looked at me, but I just shrugged. "Another one of your mystery gifts?" she asked. "Another one," I confirmed, trying to keep my tone light. The dinner begins. The evening started quietly, the kind of cozy warmth you hope for on Christmas Eve. The fire crackled softly in the living room, and the candles on the table cast a gentle glow. The smell of roasted vegetables and spiced cider filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of pine from the Christmas tree. We clinked glasses, laughed at Lily's stories, and for a while, I let myself believe the night would stay simple. Then the doorbell rang. I froze, the sound cutting through the room like a knife. Sarah raised an eyebrow, and Lily looked up, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Are you expecting anyone?" Sarah asked. "No," I said, already standing. I opened the door to find Nathan on the other side, his breath clouding the cold night air. He was holding yet another bouquet of poinsettias, and his expression was a mix of nervousness and determination. "Nathan," I said, my voice flat. "Emma, I know I'm interrupting, but please, just hear me out," he said quickly, stepping inside before I could stop him. He walked into the dining room, his eyes darting to Lily, then to Sarah, and finally back to me. "I couldn't let Christmas go by without telling you. I still love you. I want us to be a family again." Sarah's eyebrows shot up, and Lily looked between us with wide eyes. I could feel the weight of his words settling over the room, heavy and suffocating. "Nathan, this isn't the time," I began, but he cut me off. "It's never the right time, Emma," he said, his voice rising. "But I'm here now, and I'm trying. Isn't that worth something?" Before I could respond, there was another knock at the door. The confession. I opened the door, my heart already pounding, to find Luke standing there. He wasn't holding flowers or gifts. Just himself, standing in the cold with an expression that was equal parts vulnerable and resolute. "Luke?" I said, confused. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice steady. "Now's not really a good time," I said, glancing over my shoulder at Nathan. "I think now's the only time," Luke said. He followed me into the dining room, and the moment he stepped inside, Nathan's eyes narrowed. "What the hell are you doing here?" Nathan demanded, his voice sharp. Luke didn't look at him. His eyes were on me. "I came because there's something you need to know," he said. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Sarah leaned back in her chair, watching with barely disguised interest, while Lily sat quietly, sensing the tension. "The gifts," Luke said, his voice breaking the silence. "They weren't from Nathan. They were from me." For a moment, the words didn't register. I stared at him, trying to make sense of what he had just said. You're the one who sent the gifts? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Luke nodded, his expression earnest. Yes. Because you deserve to know what it feels like to be truly loved. To be seen. And I couldn't stand by and watch you doubt your worth anymore. The room erupted. You've got to be kidding me. Nathan shouted, stepping forward. You betrayed me. You think you can just steal my family? It's not about you, Nathan, Luke said calmly, his eyes still on me. It's about Emma. It's always been about Emma. The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. I felt the weight of everyone's eyes on me, waiting for a reaction I didn't have yet. Click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. In that moment, everything unraveled. The gifts, the locket, the gestures, they all made sense now. But so did the weight of it all. 2 men. 2 confessions. 2 versions of love, each asking me to make a choice I wasn't ready to make. That night, the answers didn't come. But one thing was clear, Christmas was no longer just about the gifts. It was about deciding who I wanted to be, and what kind of love I deserved. What would you do if you were Emma? Would you forgive Nathan, or take a chance on Luke? Let us know in the comments below. For the first time, I saw the truth clearly. Nathan's love wasn't about me. It wasn't about who I was, or what I wanted, it was about him. About control, about holding on to something he had let slip through his fingers, something he thought he could reclaim with grand gestures and promises that rang hollow. And Luke. Luke's love was different. His words lingered in my mind, you deserve to know what it feels like to be truly loved. Luke's love felt warm, unselfish. It felt like being seen for the person I am, not the role I played. But standing in the wreckage of that Christmas Eve dinner, I realized that neither of them could decide my future for me. This wasn't about Nathan, and it wasn't about Luke. It was about me. For the first time in years, I had to choose myself. This Christmas wasn't about finding love, it was about reclaiming who I was. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so. The snow fell in soft, delicate flurries, covering the ground in a pristine white blanket that crunched softly under my boots. My breath came out in small clouds as I walked, the cold air sharp against my cheeks and the tip of my nose. I had left the house to clear my mind. Lily was asleep, curled up under her favorite blanket, clutching the stuffed reindeer she'd had since she was a baby. Sarah had insisted I take some time for myself, promising to stay until I got back. Go, she had said, her tone gentle but firm. You need this. Now, as I wandered the snow-covered streets, the events of the evening replayed in my mind like a movie I couldn't turn off. Nathan showing up with his flowers, his impassioned speech about wanting to fix things. Luke standing in the doorway, his voice steady as he confessed to being the one behind the gifts. You deserve to know what it feels like to be truly loved. I closed my eyes briefly, the memory of his words hitting me like a wave. For years, I had buried parts of myself, parts one didn't think anyone noticed or cared about. And now, here was someone who had seen me, even when I hadn't seen myself. And then there was Nathan, the father of my child, the man who had been my partner for so many years. I had loved him once with everything I had, but that love had become fractured, weighed down by betrayals and half-hearted apologies. The snow continued to fall, tiny flakes landing on my coat and melting into the fabric. The quiet of the night seemed to echo my own thoughts, the only sounds the crunch of my boots on the snow and the faint whistle of the wind weaving through the empty streets. As I walked, my mind turned not to Nathan or Luke, but to myself. Who was I without them? Without the titles of wife or ex-wife, without the person I had become while trying to hold my family together? The truth was, I didn't know. And that scared me. When I got home, the house was still. The dining table had been cleared, the candles extinguished, and the faint smell of spiced cider lingered in the air. Sarah was sitting on the couch, a mug of tea in her hands, the glow of the fireplace casting a warm light over her face. She looked up as I walked in, her expression both curious and concerned. Feel better? She asked, her voice soft. I nodded as I hung up my coat and joined her on the couch. I think so. I just needed to get out of my own head for a bit. Sarah set her mug down and turned to face me fully. So, what now? She asked, her tone gentle but probing. I sighed, leaning back against the cushions. I don't know, Sarah. I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions. Nathan is trying so hard to fix things, and part of me feels like I owe it to Lily to at least try. And then there's Luke. He makes me feel seen? Sarah offered. I nodded. Yes. Seen. But that terrifies me, too. Sarah was quiet for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. Then she reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. Emma, she said, her voice steady, you don't need a man to complete your story. You're the writer. This is your story. And the only person who gets to decide how it goes is you. Her words settled over me like a blanket, warm and comforting. But they also carried a weight, a challenge I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I don't know if I can do it, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. You already are, Sarah said. Look at everything you've built, Emma. You've created a life for yourself and for Lily out of ashes. You've kept going, even when it felt impossible. You're stronger than you think. I blinked back tears, her words cutting through the fog of doubt that had been clouding my mind. For the first time, I said quietly, I think I believe that. Sarah smiled, her warmth radiating through the room. Good. Because it's true. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the faint outline of the locket on my nightstand. Its golden surface caught the soft glow of the moonlight filtering through the window, and for the first time, I didn't see it as a question mark. I saw it as a reminder. A reminder that I didn't need Nathan or Luke to feel whole. That my worth wasn't tied to the way they saw me, but to the way I saw myself. I had spent so many years trying to fit into roles that other people had created for me, Nathan's wife, Lily's mother, the dependable baker who always put others first. But this Christmas, I realized that the most important role I could play was my own. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't sure what the future would hold. But for the first time in years, I felt ready to figure it out. This Christmas wasn't about finding love, it was about choosing myself. If you were Emma, what would you do? Would you forgive Nathan, explore a future with Luke, or choose yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. The days after Christmas felt quieter, slower, as if the world had taken a collective breath after the holiday rush. The bakery was my anchor as always, its steady rhythm of kneading dough, icing cookies, and greeting customers grounding me in the familiar. I had spent the past weeks reflecting on everything that had happened, Nathan's attempts at reconciliation, Luke's heartfelt confession, and the realization that this Christmas wasn't about choosing between them. It was about choosing myself. For once, I had allowed myself to pause, to ask what I wanted out of life, and to take steps toward creating it. But even as I focused on Lily, the bakery, and my own sense of self, I couldn't deny that Luke's words stayed with me. They didn't press on me, didn't demand anything, they simply lingered, warm and steady, like a quiet reminder that I deserved to be seen, to be loved for who I was. It was a crisp January morning when the bell above the bakery door jingled. I looked up from the counter where I was arranging a display of croissants, expecting to see a regular customer. Instead, it was Luke. He stood in the doorway for a moment, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, his breath visible in the cold air that followed him in. He looked nervous, but his eyes were steady as they met mine. "Hi," he said, his voice soft but sure. For a moment, I didn't move. Seeing him there brought back everything, the gifts, the confession, the quiet vulnerability in his words that night. And yet, as I watched him, I didn't feel overwhelmed or unsure. I felt calm. "Hi," I said back, smiling faintly. He stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. The faint aroma of fresh bread and brewing coffee filled the space, mingling with the hum of the ovens in the back. Luke hesitated, glancing at the customers seated at the small cafe tables, before finally walking up to the counter. I wasn't sure if I should come, he admitted, his hands fidgeting slightly. I didn't want to make things complicated. I wanted to see you. I folded my arms on the counter, leaning slightly toward him. And what if I wanted to see you too? The corner of his mouth lifted into a small, tentative smile, the kind that made him look younger, more hopeful. I wouldn't be mad about that, he said, his tone light but tinged with meaning. We stood there for a moment, the noise of the bakery fading into the background as we simply looked at each other. There was no pressure in his gaze, no expectation. Just a quiet openness that felt safe. As Luke and I talked, something shifted in me. It wasn't about rushing into something new, or replacing one love with another. It was about possibility. About allowing myself to explore what could be, without fear of judgment or failure. For the first time, I felt like I was stepping into the next chapter of my life not because someone else wanted me to, but because I wanted to. It wasn't about Nathan, or even Luke. It was about me, standing on my own 2 feet, ready to walk forward, one step at a time. That morning, as Luke and I talked, I realized something important. Life isn't about perfect answers or neat resolutions. It's messy, uncertain, and often unpredictable. But it's also full of moments like this, moments of connection, of courage, of choosing to move forward despite the fear of the unknown. This wasn't the end of my story. It was a beginning, a new chapter, written on my terms. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see where it would take me. What do you think happens next in Emma's story? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories like this one. Click subscribe and remember to turn on notifications so you won't miss any future episodes. And that's my story, or at least, where it stands for now. Life isn't about having all the answers neatly laid out. It's about moments like this, moments where you stop, take a breath, and ask yourself what truly matters. If you were me, what would you do? Would you forgive Nathan, the father of your child, and try to rebuild what's broken? Would you take a chance on Luke, someone who sees you in ways you never thought possible? Or would you choose yourself, focusing on the strength you've found and the life you've started to rebuild? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Leave a comment below. If my story resonated with you, if it made you reflect or feel something, I hope you'll like this video and subscribe. I've realized we're all writing our own stories, and maybe sharing mine can help someone with theirs. Oh, and don't forget to vote in the poll. Should I forgive Nathan? Should I take a chance on Luke? Or should I keep walking my own path, just Lily and me for now? Your perspective might help me find some clarity. Thank you for listening to my story. It means more than you know. What should I do next? Oh, forgive Nathan and give him another chance. Oh, take a chance with Luke and explore something new. Oh, stay single and focus on myself and Lily. Life is complicated, and we don't always get it right. But maybe, just maybe, we can learn from each other's stories.